supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogmen, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Well, there we go. Hold on. Let me get this out of the equation. And let me get in there. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Wow. There. Yay. Anyway, guys, how's everybody doing? Good? Everything's good. Everything's good out here where I'm at, even though the show is staggered, we're going now into Christmas. And it's like, oh, do I really want to, I hate to say it, but it's like, I don't even want to I don't want to go out. It's like everything is and it's really funny because everybody's getting stuff delivered and everything, but it's like, wait a minute. You still get places that are, you get a lot of traffic and people, doing this and doing that. And I'm thinking, well, who am I going to the important people in my life, what am I going to get them? Guess what? I'm going to get them gift cards. Because it gets to the point that, you know what? I'm not going to try to guess what you might like that you wait, hold on. I'm going to get you a gift card and you are going to go get whatever you want. And once upon a time, that there was always that, that thing about, people regifting stuff because they would get stuff. They'd be like, oh my God, what is this? Nope. Don't have to worry about that because you're going to get what you want. Especially, and this is the thing, when it's with adults, it's like, yeah. It's in other words, you want to make people happy. You want them to say, hey, you don't want to be that person, the person that is like, their gifts are like, oh no, it's that weird, unusual, no. So yeah, that's the route. As a matter of fact, that's the route I've taken for the last few years, and it's worked out fine. But this year I said, you know what? I'm going to take the mystery out of what mom wants for Christmas. So I went and I made a wish list and I sent a link to everybody. I said, what does mom want for Christmas? So it's like, because it's surprising the things that your children will get for you that you're like, what is this? So yeah, I sent them a wish list. And believe it or not, what I asked for is I got a new riding lawnmower, and it's stuff for my lawnmower. It's a seat cover with pockets on it, real practical stuff. But it's like, before you guys get me something that I'm like, no, and what do you want me to do with this? I said, this is going to work in reverse. I don't want a gift card. I want you to get me this. So I did that kind of deal. So, but besides that, everything here is good. Very chilly where I'm at, even in North Florida. It's chilly. Glad there's no snow because as I speak now, I see that there's a lot of snowstorms going on out there. But besides that, basically one of the things that I think everybody asks themselves this is like, what comes right behind this is New Year's 2026. And you know what? Everybody asks themselves, okay, what's on the what's it going to be like? Because as a matter of fact, I'm surprised I haven't seen it yet. That you get a lot of these now, the psychics that they're going to do the what's coming up for the incoming year. I'm surprised I haven't seen that yet, to be honest with you. All right. Because, and I'm like, whatever you guys are going to come up with short of an apocalypse, I don't know. It's because what do we got now going on? Last thing was what got an unknown body traveling through space towards Earth, sunspots, solar flares. What else? You name it. So it's like, so I'm looking forward to see what they're going to come up with, because it's like, and I'm thinking, you know what? I bet you there's psychics out there that saying, I'm going to sit this one out, because anything that I say is going to be wrong. Because who knows what could happen in 2026. So let me get on to the first story that I wanted to share with you guys. You know that uh, sometimes is, what is that? And be quiet. Yeah, I've got my little troop here. They're here with me. Um, they here we go. Er, Let me insert myself in here. Yes. Okay. This is out of the Guardian. Yes, it's the no, I'm sorry, the Daily Mail. This is out of the Daily Mail. And it's titled Mysterious Demon Monolith Adorned with Screaming Faces and Twisted Bodies Appears in California Desert. And the reason this got my attention was, as you know, there have been some monoliths that had appeared on and off, like in different parks, but there was just like a cube. All right, that was it. And people were like, "Who put it there?" Like, in other words, they would appear, and you would come and look at it. And as far as I know, maybe they disclosed it. I never found out who was dropping these things off. But this is a little bit more weird. Okay, what this is a mysterious demonic monolith has appeared in the California desert, adorned with screaming faces, twisted bodies, serpents, and a giant eye carved into its center. Standing more than 9 feet tall, the black statue was spotted by several visitors in Joshua Tree National Park over the past few days. Witnesses claim it groans every few minutes, glows at night, and is covered in hundreds of sculpted human corpses. Jeepers creepers? Okay. Word of the strange structure exploded online after a TikTok video went viral with the creator hissing, "It's not a hoax. It's not AI. It's real. It wasn't here yesterday." Okay. Drivers passing along Highway 62 also reported seeing smoke drifting off the monolith as they drove by. The eerie discovery has sparked a wave of fear and conspiracies, with some speculating it could be part of a ritual site or a warning of an ominous event yet to come. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. But soon, an entirely different theory emerged. Canadian video game journalist Jeff Kylie posted about the monolith on X, igniting speculation that the statue could be tied to an upcoming game reveal. And for those of you who are watching the video version of this is what this thing looks like. That's let me tell you something. Whoever sculpted this thing, it's very hellish. Yeah, it has that Eye of Sauron look about it. Anyway, let's keep going. Look at this. For those of you watching, it's got like corpses. I want to say zombies. A lot of the skulls are like vampires. I mean, I don't know what the material is, but it's like a sculpture. It's got a very hellish looking. But anyway, because Kaylee organizes one of the biggest gaming events of the year, fans assumed the mysterious figure might be a teaser for an unannounced project. Gamers quickly began connecting the statue's features to different franchises. One fan traveled to the desert and suggested it might be linked to God of War. Others floated theories pointing to Doom, the Dark Ages, DLC, the Elder Scrolls 6, Elden Ring 2, a Diablo 4 expansion, a new Castlevania, a brand new dark fantasy IP, or even Lords of the Fallen 2. However, CI Games CEO Marek Tymiński stepped in to shut down at least one rumor. Flattered so many think we're behind that statue, Tymiński posted on X, can confirm it's not us. We're not just as hyped as you are. We're just as hyped as you are. Devs are praying it's something from FROM. Huge respect to them, and we dream of reaching the level one day. Big news coming for both Lords of the Fallen and Lords 2. Kylie later shared another post teasing major news coming on December 11th, fueling speculation that the true origin of the monolith may finally be revealed. One gamer even traveled to the desert, suggesting a link to God of War. Other theories point to potential DLC for Doom, the Dark Ages, or the Elder Scrolls. Okay. Other gamers have speculated that the monolith could be related to Elden Ring 2, a Diablo 4 expansion, blah, 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 blah. Okay, others are saying it's not us. Now, honestly, when you look at this thing, you're hoping it's a game because if this is somebody's idea of I don't know what, it's very dark, you know. So in a way, it's almost like, yeah, if this is some type of you know, way to get attention, it's working. But yeah, I hope it is one of these gamer things. What can I say? All right, let's see. Let's go on to the next story, and I have two this time. The other one, I was gonna only do that one on the monolith, but then I said, you know what? This is really weird. This is out there, and this it's one of those things that you think about, but then don't think about until you see a story like this. This is out of the New York Post, and it's titled "Royal Caribbean Accused of Stuffing Dead Passenger in Refrigerator. Here's How Bodies Are Dealt with on Cruise Ships." And I think to myself, well, what else are you supposed to do with them? I mean, if somebody unexpectedly dies, that is. Royal Caribbean is under fire for its handling of passenger Michael Virgil, who died on board after being served 33 drinks at one of the Navigator of the Seas bars in December 2024 per a wrongful death lawsuit filed by his family. 33 drinks, mother God. Now the family's lawyer is accusing cruise liner employees of stuffing the 35-year-old California father's body in a refrigerator before continuing on their voyage, ignoring pleas from his fiancée, Connie Aguilar, to return to port in Long Beach, California. In light of the traumatic incident, many viewers were wondering what happens to seafarers when they pass away while at sea. According to inside sources, cruise ships are outfitted with hidden morgues for the deceased that are off limits to regular passengers. These maritime mortuaries usually present as refrigerated rooms with shelves that are typically located on the ship's lower decks near storage spaces for food, alcohol, and miscellaneous ship supplies. Right, yeah, it's like, there you go. In fact, professional cruise ship singer Dara Tucker made a macabre disclosure on TikTok in 2024, warning passengers should be wary when a cruise liner throws a free ice cream party. She claimed that this is often a red flag that more people have died on the ship than they have room for in the morgue, forcing them to store corpses in the freezer, as was the alleged case with Virgil. The leisure voyage vessels also come equipped with body bags, and should a death occur, they're prepared to hold the bag or bodies on board until the ship reaches a port large enough for arrangements to be made to return the deceased home. Storing bodies is not nearly as tricky as dealing with the legal headwinds involved in a death at sea, which is communicated aboard via cryptic code words to avoid passenger panic. I believe that. Florida-based lawyer Keith Brace, whose firm specializes in injuries and incidents at sea, says that cruise companies in general are not obligated to release the findings of their investigation into passenger deaths. This allows the pleasure boating purveyor to downplay or obfuscate anything that would make them seem liable in order to cast themselves in a good light. He said that as a result, cruise liners are likely to attribute the deaths to natural causes, even if the totality of the circumstances at hand suggest otherwise. That being said, cruise liners are required to track crimes aboard their ships, according to the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act passed in 2010. And the question is, how did Michael Virgil die? Brace noted that alcohol is involved in the majority of the deaths, as was the case with Virgil, who had a blood alcohol level of 0.182 to 0.186% or more than twice the legal driving limit, according to an autopsy report obtained by the Daily Mail. Per the National Library of Medicine, a BAC or at over 0.40% is considered potentially fatal. Oh my God. However, death can and do occur at lower levels due to other complications, including aspiration and blocked airway, respiratory arrest, and low oxygen cardiac arrhythmia, combining with prescription drugs and underlying conditions such as dehydration and malnourishment, which may take the body more vulnerable to the effects of alcohol. Virgil had reportedly been served nearly 3 dozen drinks as part of the Royal Caribbean bottomless alcoholic beverages package, according to the wrongful death suit. However, it's not clear how many of those drinks he actually consumed. Then the intoxicated passenger reportedly went on a rampage after he couldn't find his room, allegedly attacking and threatening to kill crew members and passengers. You know what? Now that I see this, I did see a version of this. He did go like really, he was kicking like a door. This guy was having an episode. And they were saying alcohol, but yeah. Let me see. According to the wrongful death suit, they reportedly stood on his body. Yes, I saw this with their full weight, administered an injection of the sedative haloperidol, and sprayed Virgil with multiple cans of pepper spray. Oh, the passenger was reportedly held down for 3 minutes before he was cuffed and taken into the ship's medical center, still breathing, per an autopsy report by the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's Office. Officials noted that while Virgil's blood alcohol levels weren't fatal on their own, they did inhibit his ability to respond to distress during restraint. The seafarer's death was officially attributed to cardiopulmonary arrest and ruled a homicide, the lawsuit alleges. Ooh. And I'm telling you, yeah. And he's a big boy too. He's a big guy, like tall, husky guy. What do you think, guys? So now you know if you get a lot of ice cream while you're on the cruise line, somebody died. And do you think it's right that, because I can understand, like if there's a homicide, if something happened, do you think they should keep it from the passengers or not? I can understand if somebody dies from natural causes, maybe they have a heart attack or something. It's like, okay. But something like, homicide, what do you think? Should they disclose it? Or should they hide it or only disclose it if asked? And what about them not turning back to port? I don't know how far out they were when this happened, like if they were close enough to go back. And again, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the monolith in the desert? Weird, huh? I bet there's a lot of stuff going on. Here, you're thinking they've got a morgue next to the frozen foods. What can I say? So anyway, let's see. Hold on. And the reason why I laugh is that, we look at it, and I've been on cruises. I've been on plenty of cruises, believe me. I've been on plenty of cruises. And you don't think about that because you're having a good time, honestly. But when you start thinking about, that's why I wanted to read that, because it's food for thought. And that's another thing. A lot of these ships, these crews, they're registered out of foreign countries, and they're in international waters. How do they handle something like that? What can be done about it? If, let's say in the case of this, that they restrained this guy and they pepper sprayed him and served him 33 drinks. A lot of good questions. But anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part is, who is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural? His name is Dennis W. Carroll. He's been here before. He is the founder and director of the American Institute of Paranormal Research, AIPR. He has 40 years of experience in the field of the paranormal. He studied, researched, and investigated many aspects pertaining to the paranormal and the supernatural, with many personal paranormal experiences. He is also a researcher and investigator of the occult and the supernatural. He's a well-known authority on folklore, legends, superstitions, cryptozoology, and the occult. He's a supernaturalist and paranormal consultant who has advised people throughout the world. Dennis is a published freelance writer and author who's written several books and is currently at work on a series of adventure novels based on supernatural events. But he's going to have a brand new book coming out soon, and we're going to ask him about that. He's an ordained minister and a photographer, a well-known UFO and cryptid researcher. He's also a speaker and performs lectures and presentations on culture, folklore, myth, and legends. Help me welcome him. How are you doing today, Dennis? Oh, here we go. Here we go. How are you doing today?
Good evening. Good evening. It's good to be back with you again.
Yes.
I'm a retired ex-law enforcement too, and
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Well, since you were talking about the guy on the cruise ship,
Yep.
it's very, very rare they will ever turn a cruise ship back from where it's going. It's sort of like a maritime law; you just don't turn around for even death. Sometimes, yeah. But the interesting thing about that, and being in law enforcement, the reason I mentioned that, we have pepper sprayed each other, to understand what the effects of pepper spray is like. And believe me, if you have some respiratory problems going on, pepper spray can really accelerate that.
Sure.
It can keep you from breathing correctly. It can do a lot of things to you, depending on what your health status is. Being healthy, though, it's not even good when you're healthy, much less having a problem. And one other thing I was going to say about that guy, definitely, his body was preserved in alcohol. If he drank 33 drinks, he might as well have been preserved in alcohol, definitely.
Well,
So
the
they
thing
wouldn't have to
is
worry
that
about refrigerating him too much.
even if he
Yeah,
didn't drink all 33, let's say he was getting some for his girlfriends, but I think his fiance was on the trip. Still, even if you drink 15 drinks, come on. It's like, what is that? Now, do
yeah. I
you?
mean, yeah, wonder was, I'm really surprised he did not die from alcohol poisoning. That's
Well,
wild.
and you know
Yeah,
what's really, and I guess that I mentioned that that here in the United States, these places, the bartenders, I think there's a moment where they say, "Hey, I can't serve you anymore. Like you've been drinking too much, and like we don't want to be liable, like if you die or whatever." But I guess
right.
that when you're on the cruise ship, those rules don't apply.
Well, that should be, that's kind of ridiculous to me, Marlene, because I mean, there should be a cutoff point. So there should not be a bottomless thing like that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
People are going to abuse that. So
sure.
any good bartender knows that there's a certain cutoff point for somebody. You don't serve any more drinks after that because, I mean, you are running a risk of if you have some unknown health factors. You're running a risk of
And
accelerating that too. I mean, that's crazy. But
and
I
that's
could
that.
see where there would be a lawsuit in that.
Oh yes, and well, they're saying that they determined that it was a homicide. Okay, there's no,
Yeah.
in other words, something somewhere along the line, they
Hmm.
whether it's because they gave him too much alcohol or because what they did with him after they had him
And
restrained.
drugging somebody too. That drug they gave him,
Oh my God, that's another thing. Yes, yes,
yeah. And that's just like any pill you take right now, whatever it may be. They really do not know what it's going to do to you. That's why
yes,
your doctor tells you, well, if you start having these bad effects and all that, stop taking it,
right.
And I've had doctors tell me that. I said, don't worry, I will, yeah. But every medicine has that potential, no matter what kind of drug it is, of reacting on you. You never know, you
Yes,
know?
yes, and that's I think the problem that people when they get on some of these, because I've been on cruise ships that that stays in Vegas, happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas, is like, okay, I'm on a cruise ship, I'm not going to drive, and then I'm just going to go crazy. And
Yeah.
I've even heard of people falling overboard and stuff like that because they get so intoxicated. And then it takes a while for somebody to realize, hey, have you seen so and so? Have you seen so and so? And it's like, no, so and so is like about 3 miles back in the ocean. So yeah, and
I know
well,
we had one case when I was a police officer. We had one case of a beautiful young girl. She was, I think, probably about like 17 or something. She shouldn't have been
mhm,
drinking in the bar, whatever the
okay,
situation. But she actually consumed so much liquor that she did have alcohol poisoning. It killed
yes,
her.
people get
And
overloaded.
I think her family sued the bartender for
You
that
see, that's
because
what I mean.
man, the
Yes,
establishment that said, you should not have given her that. You should have known there was a cutoff point. And that's the ridiculous part of this thing with the cruise ship. Like you say, they go wild, let them go do whatever they want to. There should be some rules on even that, But
yep.
that's the way it is.
But you know what? Now, when they mentioned that thing about that singer that said, "Hey, if they have an ice cream party on the ship, that means that they run out of space in the freezer slash morgue." And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how many of those personnel's like, "Hey, we need to go to the freezer." Yeah, but I'm not going alone. Come with me. And it's like, yeah, because that's where they store the bodies. And,
I
and
used
it's
to
like,
years ago. I used to work at a hospital. I worked at a hospital for about 30 years, and
okay,
I worked down the hall from the morgue. And I would go in the morgue and help them out every now and then when they got in a situation or whatever it was. And one time I had to. They had the body of a very large woman. She was probably about 400 pounds,
ooh,
and
okay,
they put her in a drawer. The drawers in the morgue with the
yes,
doors. They put her in a drawer, and the drawers themselves are on rollers, and they roll in, into
hmm,
and this is a refrigerated unit too. It's
yes,
refrigerated, but not to the point. I would say it's probably around like 40 degrees or something, in
right,
there. It's not,
okay,
very
not freezing, not
cold.
freezing.
Well, so they put her in this thing, Marlene, and she slipped. The tray slipped off of the roller, you know,
Oh my God.
and they couldn't get her out, you know. And
Oh,
so I had to crawl up in there,
oh, you?
and yeah, underneath it, in the tray underneath her, And that's a freaky feeling. They had to shut the door while I was in there.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I had to
did your
crawl.
boss
I
not
had to
like
crawl.
you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm shut in the more drawer, okay? And I had to crawl up in there and push that roller back up, trying to get that. And she's
Yeah.
like 400 pounds, And I actually, inside that drawer, I had to kind of put my knee up and push on it. Finally, I thought, my gosh, I got to be careful because if it slips off anymore, she's
You
going to be on
fall on
top
me.
of me down here in this
Yes.
drawer. So it was a bad situation. I thought when later on I said, "God, no, I should not have done that."
Right, man. I was gonna say that's a
But
pretty good incentive. Like, push, man. I gotta get this thing out. I was gonna
yeah,
say, were you on the bad side of your boss? Is that why he sent you in there, or she sent you in there?
yeah.
It's like, oh,
Let's,
which of
let's go ahead and get that done. Okay, that's okay, but make sure you open
like,
the door. And let me back out. But
oh yeah,
it was really freaky. But working it, and I worked, did a lot of things with the morgue. I would help them out every now and then, because they would, need somebody to help them move something or
sure.
someone. And I've actually saw there was one time that I've seen autopsies, and
Hmm.
that's not really my cup of tea, but I've watched several of them,
Right.
and but it's a very methodical way they go about that. They record everything and all that. It's fascinating
Right.
stuff. And as a writer, that gave me a lot of
Yeah.
ideas on
Yeah.
that. But, yeah, but the interesting thing about that is I actually seen them one time exhume a body that had been in the ground for about 10 years and do an autopsy on it.
Really.
And that was very interesting. You would
Was it?
not believe
Had the body? Well, was had the body been embalmed?
yeah, how much that deteriorates in 10 years' time. It's something else. And, they put you in a vault. Most of the time you're in a vault, in burial ground type thing.
Hmm.
There's a
Yes.
vault, but that does not. That's really useless in a way. I mean, that's just more padding money on the thing, basically, because it makes you feel better. Oh, we got somebody in the vault,
Right.
but it really is not in. It doesn't. It's not waterproof. Okay, let's put
Yeah.
it that way. It's not. It's not going to do that. But it's more. I think the idea of it is what they sell it more for and make
Oh, for
money
sure.
on. Because the funeral industry is
Oh,
nothing but an industry. That's what it
oh,
is.
absolutely. They
It's
make so
like,
much
yeah,
money. They make so much money that
yeah,
that as a matter of fact, where I live, you see that there's a lot of what they call rural or family, even more than just family, but neighborhood cemeteries, which are kept up by the people that have like burials there. And in other words, the only thing they pay for is to open the hole. And to be honest with you, I doubt very much they even have vaults. I think they just have they drop the coffin in there because it's gotten so expensive to go to the big giant cemeteries, though the other ones that that they like you
yeah.
said, they charge a lot of money for a
I've
burial.
always myself. I've always been interested to be more like I would prefer. I think above ground burial.
Hmm.
In mausoleum. Something like
Yeah,
that.
one of those.
I often tell people that I said, well, if ever one day a tornado comes up and destroys the mausoleum, they'll say, well, there's Dennis. He turned up again.
Let me ask you,
Yeah, that
why were
happens in
they
New
exhuming?
Orleans too a lot.
Oh, yeah,
They
well,
say
New
the
Orleans
captain.
because of the water level. Let me ask you,
Yeah, they
why
come out
did
of the ground.
do you remember why they were exhuming that body? Was it murder investigation, or they had doubts about the cause of death?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I had a friend who was he was in the Katrina thing, in New Orleans
Mhm.
at that time,
Yes.
that hurricane, and he said you would see caskets floating down the street.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, Jesus.
Looking like wild stuff. Yeah. Now, I got a story about that. There's a story that took place during Katrina, and what it was, they had to go house to house for a while
Okay.
there and see if there were any dead bodies. They had to check for dead
Yes.
bodies. And
Yes.
and they would go from house to house. This was on the outskirts of New Orleans, I think,
Mhm.
where some of the levees had broken, and all that.
Yes.
And they had a thing where they had red paint, and if you found a body, like one or two bodies in the house, you would paint that on the side of the house. Number two or number three or whatever, how many bodies you
Right.
found, so they would know there was a body there to pick up. And so these two guys, they were going from house to house in this neighborhood, and they came upon this house. They said we knew immediately when we saw this house that it was a voodoo house. It was
Okay.
people who believed in voodoo
Mhm.
because they had like chicken bones hanging up on the outside of the
Okay.
house, so that's the door, and all that stuff. And they said in the back room, Marlene, they came up on a very interesting sight. In a very far back room in this house, chained to the wall was a dead body.
Oh.
And they said it was dead, but I mean, without doubt, it was deteriorated. You could tell
Uh-huh.
it had been there quite a while. And they said it was hanging over, and they talked about it had like long white hair was hanging down all of it,
Oh,
and
those
was
I'm
hanging
surprised
over
they
on these
didn't just run
chains
out.
like
I
that.
I I I would have
But,
been like, "Okay, I'll paint like a
well,
question mark."
yeah, well, they said that this was like something out of a haunted house amusement thing or something. It was just
Yeah,
said it was
exactly.
hanging there. And they walked up to it and they said, "My gosh, what happened here? Somebody they left this body in here or what? And as they were standing there looking at it, said the thing lifted its head up and laughed at them.
Oh, man. See? See what I mean?
And he said, I don't remember we leaving this house. We left that house. And his buddy said, what are we going to do about painting on it? He said, don't worry about painting it. Let the next crew find out about it. I'm not going to deal with
Yeah,
that.
that's
That was freaky. Was that some kind of like a zombie or what? That
well,
was
that's the
weird.
thing that you're like, "Oh." No, I'm telling you, I would have been like, "Nah, oh. No, but yeah, I remember when Katrina came through that you heard a lot of things like that of,
Mm.
the
And there were
coffins and
stories too.
people and,
There were stories told about people seeing reptilians assuming guard duty with some of the National Guardsmen and all. You hear some really freaky stories
Really?
again.
No, yeah, I haven't heard that. What was the stories that they were saying about that?
Well, of course, there's supposed to be sort of like a secret army within the army that is
Okay.
populated with reptilian aliens or whatever the situation.
Mhm.
Reptilians, and in my business, especially being involved in demonology, I do know that certain demons look like reptilians, or they are reptilian things, if you want to call them that. That means you could
Okay.
classify them as that. And it's been my suspicion for many years that there are certain things within the government that are operating like that. Many years ago, I got contacted by the CIA actually,
Okay.
and I was kind of interviewed about him, and it was kind of strange the way it went. It was real CIA. I mean, he had credentials and everything. It wasn't, it was only up and up. And the only thing he did, he said, "I know you're a demonologist, and I want to ask you a few things about demonology." I said,
Okay.
"Yeah, sure, shoot, that's fine with me." And so he asked me several questions about how you call up demons, how you can, get power over demons. This was really deep stuff that he was asking me, and I'm sitting there
Right.
thinking, why do you need to know this?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
thinking, what's going on with that? And he was asking me these things, and he said, finally, he said, well, said, I appreciate you helping me out with that. He was taking notes on this all the time. And I think he had a recorder too. He recorded it. And he said, I appreciate you. After I said, that's fine. And he said, by the way, he said, I'd like to offer you a job with us. He said,
Yeah,
we're looking for people like you with supernatural talents.
and you're
And
like,
I
"Oh."
said, well, thank you, but I'm kind of busy right now because
Yeah, and he's
usually
thinking, "What
the
would you
only way
guys
out of
need me
CIA
for?"
I always have heard is through the morgue. Uh, that's their retirement plan. But I said, no, well, no, thanks. I'm busy right now. And he said, well, if you change your mind, let me know. And he gave me his card.
Did
And
you ever ask him, like,
I'm thinking, that's the freakiest thing, Mark. I said, why do they need to know these things?
yeah,
Why? That's what really worried me. Why do you need to know this stuff? And the only thing I can come up with is they've already somehow or another been dabbling in this,
right?
and maybe they've opened some doors up and that they
Sure.
shouldn't have opened.
Yes,
And
yes, really.
and I found, of course, later on in years research later, I found that they definitely, have witches employed, they have psychics employed, they have
Mhm,
vampires and werewolves. When I talk about that, people say, "Oh, come on, vampires and werewolves are not real." Oh, definitely they are. They are 100% real. They
mhm.
do exist, and the CIA has got them working for them. I guarantee you, without a doubt, they do.
Well, and you know what? And you also think, What if one of their personnel gets possessed? That could be also maybe they go and they get involved in something,
Mm,
or if
yeah.
they're you know how sometimes they'll act like as a spy and maybe they're trying to infiltrate some group and before you know it they get possessed. Yeah, I mean because I was thinking exactly what you why would you need this information? What kind of investigation? What are you guys the CIA is involved in that you need to know about demonology? That's
Well, yeah, I tell people something about the CIA and do all these alphabet things, and even
uh-huh.
certain organizations. You have two sides of every coin, Marley.
Hmm.
The CIA, the FBI, all these, but they let you see a public side of them.
Right.
But
Of
on
course
the
that
flip
doesn't scare
side,
you.
the other side, you don't get to see the
Yeah.
secret side. And almost everything has a facade like that. And as a researcher, an investigative researcher, that's what I look for. I look for the other side of the coin because they put on a front, they put on a facade that they want you to see, and that's not where the real stuff is. And that's not it's not what you're looking for. And without a doubt, I guarantee you there are things going on that if we really truly knew what was going
Oh
on, we
yeah.
would probably never sleep well again.
Right, right. It's like
I don't
the
now. I don't
we
now, as a
think
matter
like
of fact, because of knowing this
CIA
stuff.
is espionage and stuff like that. But I think, like you said, if they say, "Well, yeah, we do that, but we also do this," be like, "What? You do what?" Yeah, I think a lot of people would be like, "No, no, no, no." Yeah, there's only so much that I think the general public would be willing to like process, as
Hmm.
in, like you
It
said, those.
is. It's wild. It's wild, and the deeper you get into it, the deeper into the rabbit holes you go. You find out that they're a network. They're connected in a strange kind of way. I was telling somebody that the other day. I've been involved in this now. Well, all my life. I'm going on 60 years of research into this,
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna say how old I am. I started as a baby. Okay. Anyway, I've been into this a long time, and the more you scratch the surface, the more you find out. But
Yes.
it's just scratching the surface. There's no telling what's beneath that much, and that is hidden from us. But it is fascinating stuff. But it is also disturbing in a way
Mhm.
to know
Yes.
that this kind of thing is going on, and that they are, in my next book on the back cover.
Yes.
I've got a little thing that's going to be on there, and it shows it's just kind of like me back years ago when I was a kid, sitting there on the TV watching monster movies. Okay,
What's the
and
name
this
you
is
do?
what it
What's the
said.
name of this new book that you've got coming up? You told me, but
Yeah,
what's
the
what's
name
the
of the
name of
book
the.
is called Cryptozoology. I'll tell you why it's named that in a minute. But anyway, on the back of the book, it's got this little boy, and it says, "When you're a child, you believe that monsters are real. Then you grow up to find out they really are."
Yes.
And that's the disturbing thing about it. And we are often the monsters, by the way.
Oh, of course, of course.
We
Well,
are often the
and
monsters.
you know
Yeah.
what? Everybody likes to get scared, but like what they like is well, once upon a time when people used to go to a theater, but let's say the credits roll and it's so it's over. It's like, oh, it was a movie. It's like, yeah, that's not real. It's like, but then when you come across the scenarios where it's like, you mean something like that could actually exist? And I think that's what wigs people out. As long as we're pretending that it's good for a momentary scare, but that's it. And
Oh yeah. Mm.
when and I've told a story when I was doing more often the paranormal investigations, we would have new members that they wanted to have that paranormal experience. And then if they really had one, especially early on, some of them just up and quit. They never came back. They were in there wanting to have like the in your face ghost experience, paranormal experience, and every once in a while, one of them would. That big beginner's luck kind of deal. And next thing you know, they just never came back. They would truly. We had one girl.
Yeah.
This was told to me. They went to some old museum in South Florida after hours, and it was like a two-story. It was an older house that they were using as a museum, and they had gone there after hours, and they had brought in a new member. And what they were doing was they were standing like in the rooms, but within line of sight, the downstairs and upstairs, just getting readings. This was a few years, and this girl, she got tapped on the shoulder hard, like by fingers, like. And she turned
Oh
around
yeah.
and there was nobody there. And she looked, and from what I understand, she looked, and the closest member to her was like in another room. She could see the other member, but there's no way he could have walked. from there back and forth. And there was nothing around her that they had to take her out of the place hysterical. She got hysterical. And this was just a tap on the shoulder. But they said later on that she could say it was like somebody like with two fingers tapping you really hard on your shoulder. They had to take
I
her
have been
out.
in that. I've
And
been in that
that was it. She
situation
never came
several
back.
times.
Huh?
I've been in a situation like that, Marlene. Well, actually, I have had people investigating with me that would walk out and never come back again. They would leave. That was it. They didn't want to. They didn't want to deal with it anymore. They found out it was really real,
Yes,
and
exactly.
that disturbed them greatly. And I had that very same kind of an incident happen to me when I was investigating a 16th century pub in Charleston, South Carolina. It was in the
Okay.
basement down under a trap door one night. Down there, it's freaky, something
Oh,
like
that
out
is
of a
a
movie.
very old city.
And
Yeah, Charleston is old. Yeah.
well, I was filming down there, and I could
Uh-huh.
tell all of a sudden. And I'd been down there all night, and nothing had been going on. It was kind of quiet. I would see some kind of weird lights every now and then. All of a sudden, there were like two tunnels in front of me that ran under the street light.
Okay.
And every now and then I would see it was like, lightning bugs kind of a thing,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
I couldn't film them. And that was very frustrating. I was trying to film them. And anyway, while I'm there, all of a sudden the whole atmosphere changes in that place.
Oh,
And
there you go.
I feel like somebody walks up to me.
There you go.
That's what it
Yes.
felt like. And it was like a cold spot, a moving cold spot. And it came up to me, and I
Uh-huh.
could hear like the rustle of a dress.
Oh,
And that
okay.
made me think this is feminine, whatever's coming up here.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And it stopped in front of me, and I didn't go all the way out, but I put my hand up and I could feel this cold,
Mhm.
because in the basement itself, up until this point, it had been around 80 degrees, I guess.
Sure.
And this was something like about 65 or 70 degrees feeling to it. It was very
Like it was
dramatic.
dramatic enough that
Yeah.
you knew. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I feel something like a hand on my face do like this,
Oh,
like
boy.
caress me, like that. And I kind of stepped back and I said, this is not good. This is weird. And I said, is this happening? Is this a moment where you say, is this happening? You
Yes.
know, and here's the clincher to this. I didn't understand what happened, what was going on. And I don't. A lot of times when I investigate like that, I don't say, come up and say, now tell me exactly everything that happened here. I don't want you to tell me the whole story. I want to. I look upon an investigation like a crime scene. The
Yes.
crime scene needs to tell you its story. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it
Yes.
works when you investigate. So I'll go back up to the owner, who was a really nice guy, the owner, and I said, I had something freaky happen to me just now. And I said, I felt like there was a woman down there with me. And he
Mhm.
had the funniest look on his face. He said, oh, well, there's something I didn't tell you about that basement.
There you go. Oh my God.
And I
There you
said,
go.
what is that? He said, well, back in the 1800s, there
Mhm.
was a series of murders in Charleston, very much like the Ripper murders.
Okay.
And he said it was in the wintertime, and they could not dig graves. The ground was frozen. And they stored their bodies of these 3 or 4 prostitutes that were murdered in this basement
Oh, wow.
where I was at. And everything goes click, in place. That's the rustle of the dress. That's the female
Right.
feeling I got out of that encounter.
Yes.
That's what that was.
Yes. And you know what? You're right because you hear about sometimes that the ground was so hard, so frozen that they would have to store bodies in order to
But they didn't
bury
have
them.
machinery like we do now. And there's no problem with the machinery we got now. But back then, that was a backbreaking job, to dig a grave. Yeah.
Yes. Well, no, I've heard that, and this was not so. But back then, or like you said, the 1800s. They would have like the saloons down the first floor, and then on the second floor, sometimes had a brothel, and a gaming and all that stuff.
Well,
People
this pub had been frequented by Blackbeard. That's how old this
really
thing was.
was it close
And
to
all
the
night long,
waterfront?
down in that basement, I sat on a 16th century seawall, the original harbor.
Okay, okay,
That's
that's
how
where I was
old
supposed to
this
be.
stuff was. Yeah,
So it was very close
that's
to the
history.
waterfront. A
Yeah.
lot of stuff happened. Sailors
And
went to
I did a show
Shanghai.
recently, Marlene. I did a show recently on Jack the Ripper, by the way. And my connection to Jack the Ripper is actually my grandmother on my father's side was alive, was a little baby when Jack the Ripper was doing what he did.
Yes.
And there is a very demonical side to Jack the Ripper. the murders and what I've studied about it. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but Scotland Yard, by the way, really screwed that up.
Yeah, I
They
know.
really messed that up. But they didn't have, of course, a lot of the crime fighting stuff that we have now, like DNA and stuff like that. But when you look at the murders of Jack the Ripper, they're very ritualistic looking.
Yes. Yes,
And
they
that's
are.
what struck me as strange because having known about witchcraft and demonology and all that stuff, that struck me as something I said, oh, that looks very much like a ritualistic murder kind of thing going on. And
Yes.
and there is a theory that Jack the Ripper, and there have been other Jack the Ripper like murder series over the years in two different
Mhm.
centuries,
Yes.
all over the world, different places. And the theory is that there is a demon that inhabits people from time to time
So in
and
other words,
turns them
there
into
it's a
serial killers.
different person, but it's the same
Yeah,
demon kind of thing? Is that it?
yeah, same demon, different
Wow.
people, different centuries.
Right,
Um,
it hops
and
from
I'm gonna
host
tell
to
you
host.
what, and being ex law enforcement, we had to study a lot of this stuff, and serial killers. And I have seen serial killers. Studied a lot of that, and along with ritual murders and stuff like that, we had to take classes on demonology and witchcraft in law
Okay.
enforcement to understand this stuff. Well, let me say this. This is what Charles Manson said when they took him off right after the trial. And I was
Mhm.
alive. I remember when this happened. At the end of the trial, they were taking him away for good and lock him up. He turned to the DA and he said something very interesting. The whole court heard it. He said, "You may lock me away for the rest of my life, but my spirit will walk your streets every night."
I didn't know he said that. Wow. That's very ooh. Yeah, that does speak to what you were describing. Absolutely. And you know
Yep.
what? When you say that thing about Jack the Ripper, I think at the beginning, what they did, first of all, Whitechapel was a poor, and there was a lot of violence. It was a very poor part of London. And there was, how's that? There was crime there to begin with. And of course, the victims were prostitutes. Prior to Jack the Ripper, there had been other prostitutes that had been killed and dismembered, but most of the time, they would like do stuff so they couldn't,
But
normally,
they
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 would
were
cut off the
convenient.
head for identification, but that thing that
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper was sending the cops, like, kidneys and parts of the
Oh yeah, he
victim's
sent
body.
the earlobe of one lady
Yes,
to as his bona fides in one letter, and then he sent a piece of the kidney. He said he ate the other piece, fried it and ate it, and it
right.
was delicious. Yeah,
Yes,
he was
that's
really
yeah.
a humdinger. He
Well,
was
in other
something
words,
else.
it wasn't just a question of, okay, let's face it, and I'm sure, like you said, you're in law enforcement. Sometimes prostitutes, hey, where was well, maybe she got killed, she did something stupid, or but there was, like you said, a ritualistic, like well, beyond sadistic uh, aspect to
Mhm,
those crimes, where besides dissecting her, you know how they were saying that every time he would kill some prostitute,
mhm.
it got worse. The what he was doing to the bodies was getting worse and worse, as far as displaying them and opening them up, that it's like, okay, yeah,
Well,
it was something.
without a doubt, he was either a butcher or a surgeon because he knew what he was doing, and he did it very quickly on the sidewalk. Doing what he was doing at the dead
Yes,
of night. He may have had a lantern of some sort. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I can't tell you for sure, but we don't really know. But he was an expert at what he was doing. I mean, how many times could you actually cut a woman open and know where her womb is and remove it?
exactly, right.
Uh,
That's the thing that, but
yeah.
but then
I
again, you're
mean,
thinking, okay, it could have also been, like you said, like a butcher. A lot of people immediately think, because, oh, a doctor's the only one that's going to know enough anatomy to, but or hopefully he didn't have a lot of practice. But
years ago in the South, they would not let you serve as a member on the jury if you were a butcher or a mortician or a
really,
physician because
you're
they
kidding
felt
me.
that you didn't have empathy enough for your
Okay,
fellow
I see
human
where you're
being.
going with that. Right,
Yeah.
like, and you know what? You're absolutely right. I think I see now what you mean. Like, in other words, that person, by either temperament or, hey, this is the job I need to do, they have to become like a colder type of person
Well, that's the way
to
they
do
look
that
at
work.
you. Yeah. I've
Um,
actually taught. I've actually talked to musicians, to morticians. And after
Hmm.
the work that they do, they would say, I was really proud of that. They look like this, look like they're almost like an artist painting a picture or
Right, right,
something.
right.
Yeah,
And you think
yeah.
about okay, and then and I guess to you, it's like, okay, is this how they cope with this? I mean, somebody's got to do this work, so I guess it's good that you're like that.
You have to. You have to become emotionally detached, or you can't do what you know. As a law officer, I had to do that. You can't become emotionally attached. You've got to remain professional. If you don't, then you will make yourself ineffective if you're not careful.
Well, they did this
You know.
study out of I can't remember what university in Canada, and they found that areas around slaughterhouses had higher crime rates. And
No,
in
I
other
guess
words,
so,
that they
because those are areas of trauma. That's where the demonic is drawn to these places.
yes,
Like
exactly.
mental hospitals, battlefields, morgues, graveyards. A
Yes,
lot of people say, "Oh, we won't go ghost hunting tonight. We're going to a graveyard." I said, "Well, good luck, because mostly all you're going to encounter in the graveyard is demonic, not human."
yes, exactly. People
Yeah.
don't realize that what hangs around there, or sometimes people do. You've heard, I'm sure, people going into cemeteries to do satanic rites, and sometimes they conjure stuff up, which keeps hanging out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that you hear a lot
Yeah.
about that.
There's a lot of conservation goes on attached to cemeteries, graveyards, and things of that nature. You get a lot of even magical ingredients out of graveyard dust and stuff like that.
They leave it stuff
They have
behind.
that. I had something very freaky happen to me in a graveyard in a cemetery downtown in Charleston one time years
Mhm.
ago. And it has to do with a vampire. I had been in this, so I'm kind of a history buff too. I like history,
Okay.
and I had been in this cemetery looking for a grave of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was buried there, and I did find him, and it was like a little small marker. I thought, my gosh, you ought to have something bigger than that.
Right.
He was a signer of the Declaration, but anyway, that's what I was doing there. I love to go in graveyards. It's sort of like a history book, to read the
Mhm.
songs and stories they tell. And it was it was late in the day, a fall day. I remember that. It was cloudy. It wasn't a bright sunny day. It was a kind of a dark day. And I'm looking around, just looking around through the cemetery, and practically there by myself. I don't think there was anybody around, close. And all of a sudden, I hear somebody says behind me say, "You like cemeteries?"
Oh,
And I turn around, and there's this very nice looking young lady standing there. She's probably in her like maybe early 20s or something like
mhm,
that. She's very nice looking. She's got long black hair and is pale, very pale. And
okay.
um and the first thing I noticed, I usually look people in the eyes when I meet them. I will look
Right.
you now, but I didn't do that today. I don't know why I didn't. The first thing I noticed was what she was wearing, because that was kind of odd. It was kind of a mixture of old and new clothes, like she had on a new skirt, like kind of like a jumper type skirt, but she had an old fashioned looking vest on over it,
Okay.
and I just the moment I laid eyes on her, I said, there's something not right here, you know,
Mhm.
something very off or something.
Yes.
And she was very nice though, and she stuck out her hand and I shook her hand. And believe me, I've touched a lot of dead people, and that was like shaking hands with someone who was dead.
Oh,
Okay. And I pulled my head back. I'm going, well, maybe she's got some kind of, problem, with her
circulation
circulation or
problems.
something.
Her circulation
I'm
is not
trying to
good.
explain this. And because there's a part of me, there's always a part of me that's a skeptic. There's
Right.
always an internal battle going on. So I'm saying, oh, maybe she's got some kind of circulation problem, because it was not a cold day. It was, fall day in the South. And, she says, "Oh, I love graveyards." And I said, "Really?" I said, "They're very interesting places." She said, "I live here."
Oh boy.
I said, "Oh, really? You stay here a lot?" She said, "No, I mean I live here." She said, "I'm a vampire, and I'm buried here in this
Okay.
graveyard." And I said, "Well, that's very interesting." And I'm going, "Well." Maybe I need to, maybe I need to, leave here now in a minute.
Right, you're
This
like,
is.
okay,
I look
whether
around,
you're a
Marlene, and there's
vampire or just
nobody
being
anywhere.
crazy.
Okay, I'm right here alone with this woman. And she says, and I said, "Oh, well, oh, you're in one of these vampire societies. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because every large city has them. Miami
Yes.
has it.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
got them. And she
Uh-huh.
says, "No, I am a real vampire. I'm 270 something years old. You know." And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting." And I'm starting to kind of edge away from her a little bit. And I say, "Well, what are you doing out in the daytime? Vampires and all." So she said, "Well, that's not true. We can come out, but we don't prefer sunny days. We like a day like this. It's perfect for walking, for strolling," she said. And she's got a very weird inflection. And I keep wanting to, and here's the weird thing, I keep wanting to look into her eyes, but I don't. And I think I might have been very lucky that I didn't. Okay.
Okay. Were you there by yourself in
Because
the
they say that
cemetery?
is what the power of a vampire is in their eyes. So
Yes.
anyway, I'm still talking to her, and I'm kind of edging away, and there's a tombstone behind me. And she said, I said, "Well, that's very," and she said, "Well, we just don't have as much power during the daytime as we do at night. Well,
Oh.
we are creatures of the night, or something like that. We love the night. The night is our mother, or something." She's going on weird stuff like this. And I'm going, "Okay, well, that's
And
very
you're
nice,
like,
very
where's
interesting."
that gate that gets out of here? I need
And
to get out of here.
well, I told her, and I kind of said, "I'm trying to think and look for an exit here. And
Sure.
I turn around, and I kind of look, which my way. I turn back around, and she's not there.
Oh. Oh.
And I go, "Now wait a minute, because I
Yes.
can see through this whole cemetery."
Yes.
And I said, "Where did she go? There was no way
Right.
she could have got gone that fast. Just me turning around, that
Uh-huh.
quick. There's no way humanly possible you could do that." And I
Exactly.
said, "What did she do? Is she down behind one of these tombstones?" I go looking around behind the tombstones. I forgot to tell you, she did tell me her name, and it was something, but I forget now what it was. Something like Beth Ann or something like that was her
Okay.
name. That's important. I'll come back to that in a minute. But anyway, I'm looking around, and she is gone. She is nowhere. And I hear some people talking. They're way on the other side of a fence on the sidewalk outside, and that's not her. And I said, "Where did this woman go?
Wow.
This is crazy. And I'm standing there, and I see something in the corner of my eye. And I look up, and there's some big oak trees, in this cemetery. There's big oak trees on
Yes.
the outside. I look up, and through the trees, Marlene, I kid you not, the biggest bat I have ever seen in my life,
Oh.
bigger than an eagle almost, goes flying through the trees, and all it is gone. I'm going,
Beth
nobody is
Ann?
going to ever believe this. This is freaky. And it disturbed me a lot. I got thinking about it, and that night when I went back. I was in a hotel. I went back to my hotel room. And I was thinking about this. What happened here? I
Yes, of
kept thinking about
course.
this over and over. And what in the world happened with this? You know. And that night I had a dream, and she began showing up in my dreams after this.
Oh.
And she was never prominent in the dream. I mean, I see her in the background,
Uh-huh.
walking somewhere. She was until the very last time I dreamed about her. And she came and she said something to me. "We will meet again," in the dream. Okay. But let me tell you what happened. The next day I went back to that cemetery. I said, "I got to see, I got to investigate this more. I got to
Yeah,
figure out what's going on." And I actually found a grave with her name on it
you did.
that was actually 200 and some odd years old.
And you were like,
But
"Ooh."
I never got her last name, but it had her very close to her first name, if I remember correctly. Uh, you know, that was freaky. That was freaky.
Yes. That was I mean, and you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes people, they wanna go legend tripping in cemeteries, and I think they get more than what they bargained for. They really do.
You never
Uh,
know.
recently, I was researching something for an article where they were talking about, like, in the 1960s, they had, like, a big surge of Satanism and dark ritualism in the UK.
Oh
And
yeah,
believe it or not, not even in London proper, but on the
the panic,
outskirts.
panic they called it.
Well, no, this even predated. This was like the '60s.
Oh, you're
Okay.
talking about that. Well, I've always wanted to go to that cemetery in London. You know, the big one.
What,
Not
Highgate?
Greyfriars. What's the name of it? It's
There's
a big
several
cemetery
of
in
them that are
London.
really old. Yeah, that they're really old and they've got
Yeah, it's got a vampire in it, but supposedly that haunts it. I can't think of the name. I know it, and I can't think of the name. It's a very famous cemetery. Greyfriars is another one. It's in Scotland, by the way. That is another interesting
I
one.
think there was isn't
We
there
have we think our graveyards are spooky.
yeah,
They hold nothing. They can't hold a candle to those. They are really freaky looking.
wanna
Yeah.
I wanna say, and I think it's in London. I think there was not too couple of years ago, there was somebody that they were saying that they had encounters with either a werewolf or a dogman kinda deal in one of these, like, there was a rash of sightings,
Yeah.
and it was the
Well, there have been links with Dogman. I'm gonna tell you something about Dogman, and I've done a lot of research on that. I actually saw something very similar to that many years ago, and that happened in the mountains of North Carolina when I was actually doing some cryptid. I'm big in cryptidology. You know, that's what that book is going to be about. Paracryptidology. That's why I call it, because now the fields of paranormal investigation
yes,
and cryptidology have merged to
yes,
become what I call paracryptidology, because this, skinwalkers and all this other thing. But
yes.
actually, one time years ago, I was hunting for the Wampus cat in North Carolina. It's a very famous
Okay,
cryptid, and I
yes,
had two Cherokee trackers with me. I love the Cherokees. I used to hang out a lot with them, and they were brothers, two brothers, and they were excellent trackers. And
okay,
we had been tracking something all day long through the mountains, and it had gotten dark. Night had almost fallen, and this thing had been playing a cat and mouse game with us. It just, it
okay.
had been messing around with us, and we thought we were. That's why we were hunting the Wampus cat. And before that, and I did not tell these Cherokee brothers. I did not tell them, but I had actually saw something in the trees during this hunt that looked very much like, honest to God, like a werewolf. It had to be something like that. And but it
Oh,
never came fully out of the trees for me enough to actually see it. But it was not, a lot of people say, "I was a skinny bear." No, this was not a bear. I run into enough bears, and I know a bear when I see one. This was
uh-huh,
not a bear. This looked like a German Shepherd standing like a person,
okay.
silhouette, and it had
Oh,
clothes on. By the way, it had like pants and a
really?
shirt on, so it
It had
wasn't like a dog
clothes.
man type thing. But
Okay,
this was very much. And here's the only thing I could say about this: knowing werewolves for what they are, I would not be here to tell you this story if it had seen me, because werewolves are psychotic apex killers. They will
yes,
stop at nothing. Once they see you, they'll take you out. That's it. You're not going to get away from them. They get your scent, you're doomed. Um, and it didn't see me though. I saw it, but it never saw me, and I kind of
okay,
melted back in the trees myself. I didn't want to
right,
deal with that, but I did not tell these brothers that. Okay, I didn't say a thing to them about it. And at the end of this hunt, we were tracking something, Marlene, down by a creek. And it was the weirdest track. Not, I'm not going to say I'm an animal expert tracker, but I know my stuff around tracks. And this thing looked like it had very weird prints. Like, instead of a cat prints, like a Wampus cat would be, these were like wolf tracks. Okay, very much like them, only bigger than a wolf track. And what we saw was like on four legs until it got to the creek, and then it walked off on two legs. And I'm saying, nah, wolves don't do that.
sure,
You know, regular wolves don't. And the two brothers are looking at this, and it's getting dark, and it's just a storm back over the mountains.
okay,
And this is just like some of a horror movie kind of a thing. And
yeah,
we're sitting there looking at these tracks, and one of the brothers speaks Cherokee to the other one. And I don't know Cherokee, so I said, "What did he say?" And he looked at me and he said, "We didn't sign on to track no damn werewolf. We're leaving."
oh, oh, they caught on right away.
I said, "Okay, I think I'll go with you."
Yeah,
That's
let me
it.
ask you something just out of curiosity. Did they have any history of sightings in that area? Did they ever tell
I
you
don't
that?
think they realized that. I don't know. I really didn't, ask them later on, "Hey, do you know about werewolves being around here?" But they kind of took that as being something they knew probably was out there.
Right.
That's
So
kind of the
right,
way I
right,
had the
right.
feeling.
They right away they knew when they saw
They
those
didn't see it
dragons.
maybe, but they knew that that stuff was in that kind of region, I guess, or
Yeah,
something.
it's like Wumpus cat. Okay, dogman or werewolf? No, we're not going there. Like, no, whatever. Like you said, this is an apex predator, and we don't want to find out the hard way.
Oh yeah,
What's
you
going to happen if
know.
we find it?
Well, I've often said this about the dog man and the werewolf. The two things that make them different. Dog man is dog man 24/7.
Yes.
He's that way all the time. The werewolf could be your next door neighbor, and
Hmm.
you never know it until it's too late. The werewolf is a witch, basically, a warlock or a witch that takes
Hmm.
on demonic power to become the thing that they want to be. I could tell you tonight how to you for you to become a vampire if you want to. I mean, a real vampire.
Okay.
Not like the vampire societies. I mean, the real deal. You can do
Yes.
that, but it will cost you your soul.
Exactly.
When you go
Exactly.
into the darkness, you don't come back from that.
Right.
Okay, because it has a price, and so does the werewolf thing. It is a part. These are you can become werewolves, can become vampires. You can change. You can be a shapeshifter. You can be a bear if you want to. Whatever the situation calls for, you can shapeshift into these things. That's what a skinwalker is. Basically, that's the same thing. It's just a witch they can shapeshift. And this is a premier power in witchcraft that they seek shapeshifting. You can do a lot. I mean, and the weird thing there are, and I did a show on this recently. Are you familiar with the term of dream witches?
No.
Dream witches are the witches that skinwalkers are scared of
Wow.
because these people can actually become dreams.
So they cut. What
They
they
can
invade
come in,
you,
they can
or they
invade
hunt
your
you, like you
dreams.
said, your dreams. Wow. Yes.
They can project themselves. Listen to this. Instead of turning me, if I were a dream witch, instead of
Right.
turning into a wolf, I can possess a wolf. The real thing.
Okay. Okay. And all of a
Yeah. And
sudden,
I could possess you. I could turn you into a killer. I could have you go out and murder somebody. And how could you ever prove you didn't do it?
yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Perfect
Because
crime.
all the forensic evidence is going to point to you because your fingerprints or your DNA or whatever is what's at the scene.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah.
that is the perfect crime. You take over the body of somebody else and make them your puppet to do whatever it is you want to do. Uh,
Well,
these people can do that. They have that power. They are dream witches. The reason I call them dream witches is they become dreams. In other words, they become something other than the reality that you and I are in right now.
yes.
They walk between worlds. They are in the spirit and the physical world whenever they want to. They can switch back and forth and do this. And they can invade your dreams. They can attack you in your dreams. They
Hmm.
could seduce you in your dreams. Whatever they want to do, they can get them. And that's how, instead of being, and there is a supernatural law that in order for me to come into your house, you must what? Invite me.
Invite. Yes.
Give me authority when I do that. Okay.
Yes.
They get around that by coming into your dreams because you're wide open then, just
Right.
like a
Exactly.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's the way they
you
get
have a lot
around
of
that.
people that start. I don't even want to say possession, but they start having attachments or stuff. Maybe they were, like you said, wrong place, wrong time. They went to the cemetery, and a lot of times, how it starts out is that they start having these really bad nightmares. That's their
Oh,
first sign that something's.
yeah.
But in other words, people just think, "Oh, okay, I had a bad nightmare," but like you said, it doesn't. It's not like a one night thing, and then
They
the
actually they actually call these witches spider witches too because they weave the web of nightmares.
sure, yes,
They
and
can
people
come in
don't
and do
realize
that
once
to
you
you.
start losing sleep,
They are
everything.
astral projection thing going on here. They are actually astral projecting themselves, their spirit into things. That's why
Yes,
they call them dream lovers. Even the Aborigines in Australia have a belief similar along these lines. You've heard of that term of terminology of dreamland. That's where that comes from.
yes,
They believe that that is the in between,
yes.
world, the liminal place between realities. They walk that. They walk those worlds astrally projecting themselves that way, their spirits
Right.
into either animals, people, even objects.
Well, it's
They
almost
can
along.
hide in a tree stump for that matter if they
You've heard
want to.
that rumor that they say, "Oh, if you dream, like if you see yourself die in a dream you're actually gonna die? That kinda like
Right.
that there's that connection between the dream state and the reality?
Put it
And
this way: if a dream witch wanted to assassinate you, all
mhm,
he or she would have to do, show up in your dream, give you the most horrific dream you would ever imagine having, and it could be enough to stop your heart.
right.
You will
Yeah,
die in your sleep.
yes,
Yeah.
die of fright.
Hmm.
Yes, and,
And the old wives' tale is if you die in your dream, you will
yes,
die in reality. Yeah.
yes, that's a very, like, you know how everybody usually wakes up, like, if they're having a bad nightmare, they'll wake up at the last minute, that kinda
Hmm.
thing, and you always heard that, like you said, that old wives' tale, if you die in your
I
dream,
do
you
that myself. I can be having a bad dream. So this is a dream and wake up.
yes,
If you
yes.
can do that, you've got power over your dreams. Okay. But a lot of people don't know how to. You can cultivate that. I have actually been spiritually attacked in my dreams and fought it off.
What kind of
But you
experiences
got to
happened?
have the mindset for that. You got to be ready for it. In other words, you got to train yourself to do that.
Do you have you had did you when it happened, did you know why or who was the one that attacked you?
Most of the time, it was demonic.
Okay.
These were the demons that attack me in my dream. The reason they come after you in your dreams is when you're most vulnerable. You're between life and death in
Yes.
that situation. You're sort of like in a spiritual place. In your dream mode, and you're very vulnerable then.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think
the
that's
reason
why
why
you're
I asked you
open.
was like,
Yeah,
were
you're
you
open.
investigating something or had you gotten someplace that it was like maybe you were getting too close to finding something out and then the next thing you know you're having one of these nighttime or nightmare attacks. But sometimes that happens where
Oh yeah.
you kind of almost know you're over the target because then you start having these types of experiences. So,
Oh yeah. I've had that many times. I had that happen. We were talking earlier about people leaving investigations. I had a guy one time that I was investigating with, and he kind of challenged the demonic force that was there.
oh,
Which
oh,
no, you never do that.
no,
Never
that's a
ever do
bad
that.
idea. Bad idea.
And he
Bad idea.
kind of, yeah, because he didn't believe it. He really didn't believe it.
Yeah.
And he found out how wrong he was. It attacked him. And I mean, I saw what it did to this guy. And I'm not talking it did it physically, it did emotional job
Sure.
on him.
Sure.
In
Yes.
Florida, I had to take him out of that house, Marlene. I remember taking him up this long driveway. And I had to take him up to the very end, and I started praying for him. I put hands
Okay.
on him and started praying
This
for him
what
because
happened.
he
This
was in
happened
a
while he
bad
was in the
state.
this was while
And
the
here's the
investigation
weird
was
thing:
going
at
on?
the end of the prayer, every dog in that neighborhood started howling.
But did this happen while he was on the investigation itself right then and
Well,
there?
he left that night and never came back in. That was it. He didn't want to do that anymore. He found out it was real.
Oh, wow. So this wasn't after the investigation. This was right during the investigation that he had this that he got attacked? So in other words, it was like, that's it. I have my moment. I believe it now. Thanks, but I'm not coming back. Is that what happened?
Yeah, and a lot of people go into these things thinking, this is not real. I'm play along with it, and they found out how very wrong they're. I have actually been in situations where I've had to take people. I had to do this to my own self one time and put them
Okay.
in a salt circle. Put a salt circle around them. And it's blessed salt, by the way.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
it's not Morton salt. It's blessed salt. Sea salt, what I always use. I would have a circle of this. I always carry salt with me to this day. I can
Yes.
make a circle if I have to because it's very protective. I have actually had people in the middle of investigations get attacked by the demonic, and they would say, "I got to get out of here. I can't even think straight anymore."
Okay.
They would have to leave. I had that happen during a TV show they were doing one time. I went and did a TV show with the asylum, Ghost Asylum guys. You might remember that
Okay.
show. It was on years ago.
Yes.
Actually, and they were attacked in this old hospital, mental hospital that they were investigating. I told them what
Okay.
to do to keep themselves from being attacked, but they didn't listen. The one
Okay.
that got attacked the first time, they went back. This was the second time they went back. The one that got attacked, for he listened to what I told him. He went through the whole investigation, flying colors, no problem.
Okay.
The rest of them didn't listen to me, and every one of them got attacked. One of them said, "Finally, I got to get out of here. My mind is like I can't. I got to leave."
Yes.
And he had
That's
to
what
leave. I had
happened.
to go outside and pray with him.
Let me ask you, Dennis, did you when you were doing the like as not like investigating the paranormal, but as police work, did you ever come up on a scene or some type of crime
Oh,
where you saw because of what you already knew that you're like, there's something ritualistic, there's something going on here. Maybe it was a murder, but in other words, you saw things there that you're like, okay, there's more to this place or
well,
who's involved.
not too far from where I'm sitting tonight, there was used to be an old cotton mill. There were a lot of
Okay.
cotton mills in the South back in the time. Cotton used to be king.
Yeah.
And this old cotton mill had a sub basement in it. Okay,
Mm,
and there was a night watchman there that they watched over the mill because it was no longer in working order. It was
okay.
deserted. And we got a call there that night from the watchman when I was me and another cop, and we went there, and he said there's something going on in the basement. Said I don't know what. Said I heard some screaming earlier and all kinds of stuff. And he said I don't know some drunks that got down there or what's going on. And I said
Right.
well we'll go down and check it out. And so, like I said, it was a basement, and then there was a sub basement. You had to go down another set of stairs to get to the sub basement. Now, the sub basement was not a real big place. The basement was big, but the sub basement was much smaller. It's like a room. Okay,
Okay.
it was actually two rooms. A little small room at the end of the stairs, and then the door opened to a somewhat larger room. And the door was open, but not all the way when we walked in. So we were very cautious. I didn't know what you're going to walk into.
Sure.
It was kind of the time for the hand on your gun situation.
Uh-huh.
And we were going through there with flashlights, and we walk in this room, Marlon, and this other cop is with me. He's a younger guy than me, and we're looking around, and and the walls, this room is probably, I'm going to say, okay, probably 12 by 12, something like that. Okay,
Okay.
and in the center of this room um, a pentagram on the floor,
Oh,
drawn on the floor.
okay. Oh.
And the candle, I think one candle was still burning. And it had candles at each point. I think one or two
Mhm.
candles are still burning. And we're saying, what the heck's going on here? And
Yes.
there were like blood on the walls. I don't know what kind of blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody's. But here's the interesting thing. I walk up to it, and I know what I'm looking at. This other guy, he doesn't, this is some weird crap, drug stuff, and all that.
Right.
He's writing it off, and this is a bunch of crap. Kids getting down here messing around
Right,
over
right.
there,
He
having
doesn't
sex down
understand
here,
or realize
whatever they do.
exactly what he's looking at, in other
I'm
words. You
going,
did.
no, no, no. This is something different. I said, because I could see by looking at this pentagram and the symbols that were there, the signals that were embedded in it, that this was not an amateur.
Mhm.
This was a very serious circle here.
Yes.
And this circle had been disturbed. No, by that I mean it had been messed up.
Okay.
It had been messed up. And in demonology, when you're raising a demon, you're the one that stays in the circle. The demon appears on the outside.
Right.
You may see a lot of Hollywood movies that do this the wrong way, but the demon appears from the darkness on the outside and you're in the protective circle of the pentagram.
Yes.
And you better stay there because if you don't, if you break that pentagram, he can get to you.
Yes.
And that's what happened here. I'm looking at this and I say to the other, I said, something very, very bad happened here tonight.
Oh.
Because I could look at this, look like something had been drug out of this circle
Oh.
and up to that doorway, and there was blood everywhere. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what kind of blood it was, whether it was animal blood or human blood, I don't know. But we could even see it in the flashlights, that this was human looking kind of blood. I mean, that's what it
Let
looked
me ask
like. It
you
didn't look
something.
like, fake
That
stuff.
guy
It
that
looked like
called
the
you,
real deal. Yeah.
when he said he heard screaming, did it sound like a human scream or he didn't or he couldn't
Well, they
tell?
had her screaming earlier. See, and
Okay.
I'm saying, and I'm putting two and two together. I said, this is what problem. I didn't say this to the cop because he wouldn't believe this. I'm saying to myself, I know what happened here. There's somebody called up a demon and it went bad,
Right. Right. That's what I
and the
was
demon got them. And
wow.
whatever he did, I don't know. We looked around the rest of the night, and nothing. Nobody's nothing. except for that room. And here's the freaky part: 2 weeks later,
Okay.
on New Year's Eve,
Oh.
that meal burnt down to the ground.
Oh.
No longer there. And I'll tell you something very interesting about that. I've known other places like that, Marlene. It's almost as if the stain of evil in these places is so bad that they can't remain. Something always happens to them, and they're usually done away with by fire.
Yes, I have. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I have heard of that. That for some reason, at some point in time, usually sometimes, like you said, it gets struck by lightning, or they have this, like you said, like a fire that devours everything. Like then nothing is left standing.
Aleister Crowley's house was done that way. By the way. It
Yes,
was
the
struck by
one.
lightning and burned out.
Yes, the one
Yeah, I
by
wondered about that.
Loch Ness, close to Loch Ness, Oliskin House.
Yeah,
Yes, that and
yeah,
people
yeah.
and that place. Yeah, that place, let me tell you something, even before Aleister Crowley, but there was a lot of weird stuff that went on in that house, let me tell you, even after he was gone.
Well, Aleister Crowley, being the founder of modern day paganism to a certain extent with the Golden Dawn and all that stuff, he
Right.
was working on well, they call it a magic working. He was working on actually trying to bring the whore of Babylon into existence, to precipitate the end of time, sort of thing.
Yes. Yes.
He was working on that. He was a very evil man, very evil. I'll tell you something about Aleister Crowley. He's something he used to do for fun. Okay, he would like to walk behind people and using his power trip them, make them trip. He
Really?
thought that was the most hilarious thing in the world. He would walk behind me. He said one day he did this to an elderly woman and had her
Uh-huh.
fall on the curb. He said he heard her hip crack and he just laughed. He cackled about it. He thought it was the most funniest thing he'd ever seen.
Wow. That's very, that yeah, why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised about, well, as a matter of fact, they were saying that right after when he died in Brighton in the UK, they had a rash of like these weird things of guards, night guards catching people trying to do satanic rituals in churches, like in these, these really old cathedrals or chapels, that old churches that they have in the UK. It was like right after he had died. And they were saying basically the thrust of it was that they realized that, especially like in the countryside, that they had a bunch of these covens that they were unaware of. And then all of a sudden certain things would happen. And then it's like you realize, okay, there's a lot of people maybe they're involved in this. That, of course, like you
Actually,
said, normal by day, you look at them during the daytime and they look all normal and lead apparently regular lives, but behind the scenes, they're involved in something quite dark.
one time I had a report of a black witch that died and was buried in a cemetery not too far away from where I live,
Okay.
about an hour away. And I had heard the story that he was so evil that the day they buried him in this cemetery, that a thunderstorm came up, and they had to count. They had to leave. They didn't finish the funeral. They had to leave, and that lightning actually struck his tombstone.
Oh my god.
And
That's
I had
crazy.
to go check that out. And I said,
Okay,
"Oh, that sounds
okay.
very interesting. I have to go check this out." So I found out exactly where it was, and I went there that day, and it was a very isolated, um, and but it was a churchyard cemetery. Now, churchyard cemeteries are a lot different than public graveyards. There's a
Right,
graveyard
right.
and the cemetery. Cemetery usually is attached to a church. The way it
Uh-huh,
goes.
yes, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, the church was across the road, so this was on the outside of the cemetery, like. And I thought that was
Mhm.
very strange. But he was supposedly being a black witch. Probably
Yes.
that's where they wanted to put him. So when I get there, I find a tombstone. It is a really large tombstone. It's black marble, like, and it does have a crack in it, Marlene, straight from the top down to the bottom. And I'm
Okay.
thinking, wow, this is freaky. And then I noticed what's written on the tombstone. It is the same motto of Aleister Crowley: "Do whatsoever you will."
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And I said,
Yes.
well, no wonder it got struck by lightning.
I know that Have you heard by any chance there's which by the way, they've kind of demolished it, but out in Kansas, there was this little town called Stull, Stull. There was a cemetery out there, what's called
Oh,
Stull
skull, yeah.
Cemetery. And they got a really bad reputation, and they had people doing really weird stuff, and the poor people, because as it had always been in the middle of nowhere, but it was like a kind of like a country town, a lot of agriculture around it. And eventually the little church, though, the original, like you said, the graveyard's attached to the church, but then it got too small and they moved it. But back in the
Mhm.
70s, somebody wrote an article about witches and demons, something like that, attached to that Stoll Cemetery in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And after that, they've had to deal, like every year, people going out there and doing a bunch of stuff. And even now, I think the last time I read this, they finally had to um, basically pave everything over, not pave it, but like take the tombstones away, and what was left of the old church, they demolished it
Oh, yeah.
because if you have
Relocate, in other words, yeah. Yeah.
yes. And you think, okay, they
But,
say, well, a portion of the people are out there, just young. Yeah, hey, we're gonna go out there,
well,
but
now the big difference, Marlene, between a church cemetery and just a public cemetery, like Forest
yes,
Lawn or something like that.
yes,
A church cemetery is consecrated ground, holy ground, supposedly, and you could not bury a witch in that, supposedly, or an evil person, or even a hanged person was not
yes.
allowed to be buried there. And
Hmm.
all of the graves in a church cemetery face east
Right, exactly.
for
Yeah,
Resurrection Day. Okay,
for
definitely,
Resurrection Day.
and
Yeah,
that
that's
is a Christian thing. Yeah, that's a Christian thing. But I have actually heard. But I had a guy tell me one time that he and his wife actually he was Mexican. I forget what part of Mexico this was in. I think it was on the coast or something like that. And he had told me that he and his wife had seen La Llorona, the weeping
okay.
woman, and that
Yes,
she chased them. She was after them. They couldn't get away from her. Said we would look back. Said we was as hard as we would run. We would look back, and she would still be the same distance behind us.
I've
She
heard
was
of that.
just, supernaturally moving with them. And
Yes,
said he said we got to a churchyard and ran in there, and that's
right,
what saved us. She would not walk in the churchyard.
right.
She would
Because
not
it's
come in.
constant.
She is
Right, which is
supposedly a damned spirit, and she can't enter consecrated ground, supposedly.
right.
So if you ever get in that situation, run for the nearest churchyard
Well,
you can
that's why
find.
they would, sometimes even erect a gallows, at the crossroads, like you said, and of course, not in consecrated ground. Number one, so the spirit of the executed guy couldn't follow you home. Besides, it was like a psyop. Look, this is what happens if you break the law. You get hung. But yeah, a lot of
Well,
weird stuff went on at crossroads.
the reasoning behind the crossroads is that a crossroads is naturally forming the sign of the cross. And if
Yes,
you bury someone in there, that will definitely, no matter how evil they are, keep them down, keep them from
right.
coming
They can't
back.
rise.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, of course, where the devil hangs out, too, by the way,
Right, that's what you
if you
hear
play
about people
guitar.
going to conjure, like to make deals, or stuff goes on at these crossroads. But yeah, you're right. If you were even among Catholics, suicides or anything, you were supposedly not to be buried in
Oh,
consecrated
yeah.
ground because you that was a mortal sin. And even then, and
If
from
you're
what I
excommunicated, if you're
yes,
thrown out of the church, you
they
will
were
not
like
be
yeah,
buried in
you
consecrated
will not
ground.
be
No, they
buried in
won't let you do that,
consecrated
too.
ground. Yes, and people don't realize, maybe not now, but once upon a time, people took this very seriously as to being buried the right way.
Oh,
Like you
yeah.
said, facing east,
Have you ever
and
heard of a church ground?
yes,
The church ground is a dog that was sacrificed and put in the
right,
buried in the northeast corner of the churchyard to guard that churchyard. It's sort of a spectral guardian. The church ground is sort of it's not evil in itself. It's more of a
it's more like a
guardian.
sentinel.
Yeah, yeah. But they say that there is one case where a church ground actually attacked people in a church, but there's a reason why I done it. The church had some kind of schism going on. They were arguing with each other over something,
Okay,
and the church ground showed up and straightened them out. Put it that way. That was an interesting story. You had a lot of these stories in England, but people used to do that whenever they would build churches or big cathedrals, things like that. They would actually sacrifice animals and supposedly there are rumors people
I was gonna go.
to
You're
these
gonna go
things.
there,
Yeah.
right? Because yeah, they like to say animals. You know, another thing that they had also in the UK, where supposedly, and they have found, by the way, the desiccated cats, like in in between the walls, that supposedly if you put a cat in there, it would not allow a witch to come. And usually they would do it like
Oh yeah.
places that were like taverns or inns, that kind of deal, where you had a lot of coming
Mhm.
and going of different people. That
You
supposedly if
can
you had,
go into a lot of these places, Marlene, and find witch marks. But they put witch marks in these houses to
Mhm.
protect them against witches. And the old farmers in the South used to, every one of them, somewhere on their property, had a witch jar. That was to keep witches away from their crops, keep the cows from going
are
dry.
those the
Yeah.
ones that you see hanging from the trees sometimes? That you see those
Yeah.
bottles, or is that
Yeah.
it?
And of course, that's where you horseshoe. Horseshoe with iron. That's
That's
death
iron.
stuff to witches. They don't like iron. So,
Yeah,
that's where that's at. And you had, of course, all those magical, signals painted on barns in the Amish country and
yeah. The
all that.
Mennonites
And,
and everything that
yep.
they have all those. Well, they have the Mennonite,
Yep.
well, the Amish, they have a lot of what they call the powwow magic with
And don't forget the weather vane. The weather vane was made out of
yes,
iron. Yeah.
yes, yes. They have like certain traditions that are like really like it's like okay. And
Yep.
some of them think that even the powwowers now, that they've gone a little bit underground, but they still say, because from what I understand, whoever they taught it was through, they didn't write it down. In other words, the new person would learn verbally as from the old powwow person. So, and they say that
Oh,
there's
yeah.
still some of them
Hmm.
practicing, but it's more underground as far as actually going it. But it's a very, very strong belief out there, like in Pennsylvania and stuff, with the
A lot of
powwow.
them were, a lot of them were, we call in the Appalachians granny
Yeah.
witches and hoodoo men and
Hmm.
root doctors. They had
Yes.
different names. But they, like some of the granny, we were talking about this the other day. Some of the granny witches could, if you got like burned, they could talk the fire out of you, as they
Hmm.
call it. They say a Bible passage and rub
Yeah.
it and all that, do different things. And then they could stop bleeding this way. And they were supposed to be very effective during childbirth,
Yes.
sometimes for these very purposes. The granny witches were not real, what you would call real witches, okay,
Right.
but they were
Yes.
just women who were healing type women, very
Hmm.
smart women that knew they were very close to the land, and that was the
Yes.
Celtic tradition. The Celtic peoples were always very close, attached to the
Right.
land and legends and stories of the land and all that stuff. And here's a weird, freaky thing about that. And I can see the Appalachian Mountains from my doorway. Okay, my front door.
Okay.
I'm that close to. Here's the freaky thing. Back when the continents were all connected, the
Hmm.
Appalachian Mountains were also partly in Scotland.
Really?
So the people from
Okay.
Scotland actually settled in the Appalachian Mountains. So it was like they went
Yes.
home.
Yes, right. I
That's
didn't
kind of
know that.
strange.
I didn't know that. I mean, I know that. Yeah, I did know that there was a big influx of Scots, especially like you said, 16th century Battle of Culloden, all that, all that stuff that was going on as far as, battling with the,
My
England
great
and everything.
My great grandfather came straight off the boat from Scotland. He was a Drummond, and
Okay.
he was a Highlander. Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
they have a lot of traditions and stuff like that. But they said his accent was so thick nobody could understand him. So I don't speak
Yeah.
English that well. But anyway, that was my grandmother's grandfather, I think, or something like that. But anyway, they had a long tradition with that. And by the way, the Appalachians were also attached when the continents were to the Alps. Believe it or not,
I did not know
there
that.
was so they went along. It is actually at one time before the continent split. It was the longest mountain range in the world.
Okay. Wow. And
Um,
then here we are, so many years later. But yeah, there's a lot of mysteries attached to the Appalachian Mountains, a lot. Okay,
oh
a
yeah,
lot of unusual things happen there.
very
So,
dark and mysterious ground, you might say, because a lot of things go on with that. But the Appalachian witches, and I did a show on that not long ago where I did on my own podcast. I think we were talking about they are supreme shapeshifters. You can't call them skinwalkers though, because the skinwalkers actually attack to the Hopi Indians
mhm,
of the Southwest. but they're the same thing. They're still wishes,
Right,
whichever way
right,
you're
right.
looking at it. And they have the ability to shapeshift, but they do other things besides shapeshifting. They can turn invisible. They can control your mind. They can change the weather.
Yes.
Wishes are supposed to be very good with windstorms, by the way. They call it windstorms. Uh, so they have many different powers that they seek. But in order to get these powers, I call them the nine black gates of witchcraft. There are nine specific powers that they seek. But in order to get these, they must do horrible, horrific things.
Okay.
Ritualistic murder, not only of strangers, but their own siblings, brothers,
Right.
sisters, their
Right.
own
In other
blood
words,
must be
you gotta
spilled.
prove your loyalty kind of deal, huh?
Hmm.
In other words, that you're
And,
willing to
and
sacrifice your own
extreme
blood, your own,
and torture and trauma that they inflict. The more they
yes,
do, the more power they get.
yes.
And that's why you see a lot of this stuff going on now, Marlene, with a lot of so-called entertainers. The thing
Mhm.
stuff you're seeing is not really entertainment; it is
Oh, no.
ritualistic in nature. And the
Yes.
reason they do this because just you watching,
Yes.
you're participating.
Yes,
Whether you
yes.
believe it or know it or not, you are participating by just watching it.
Right.
And they
And
raise a certain amount of power that way
people, believe it or
by
not,
getting you to participate.
you
Yeah.
can also get people don't realize, depending on because some of the stuff, the imagery that they use, you can also even get traumatized on a psychic level by some of the stuff that you're watching. You
Yeah.
might not think so, but you remember once upon a time, like when they wouldn't allow certain things in a movie or in a program. Now it's like as graphic as it can get. You're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
get it. There's like, and some of those
They
things, like you
following the
said,
motto of Aleister Crowley: "Do whatsoever you will,"
yes, and
and that is what magic and witchcraft is attacked to doing. What I explained this to someone not long ago. Actual black magic, witchcraft, whatever name you want to give it, is nothing but manipulating reality.
hmm
That's what
yes,
it is. But it's never a good thing when you manipulate other people's reality.
right. This is
Because
the thing. Like if you say, well, the ones that want to participate in that, everybody hangs out, okay, but see, that's not what they want. What they want is what I call the corruption of innocence, or like you
and they
said,
can get
hurting
you to see
others.
what they want you to see. They can get you to see what
Sure,
they want you to see.
sure.
That's the power of the vampire with glamour. That's like that lady I ran into. Did I really see her the way she wanted me to see her,
Oh, that's
or
a
did
good
I see the
question.
real thing?
That's a good
Yeah.
question, especially if she was as old as she said she was, and she didn't
Yeah.
make
I mean, if they, and the glamour is very much. Women get mad at me for saying this, but it's not like putting on makeup. That is a sort of a form of witchcraft in a way. You're
right,
changing your reality, okay? And
right.
of course, you're doing it for good reasons. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and it's like you see
But
something and it's like,
it is glamour, But the
yes,
glamour I'm talking about is the manipulation of how you perceive your reality.
sure, of course,
That's
and
not good. That is the ultimate invasion of privacy. When I start messing with your mind, touching
mhm,
your mind in whatever form or fashion, that is the ultimate intrusion into you. That's not
of
good.
course, because you
That's
always
not
think
good
of
to
your
do
mind as
anyone.
being off limits. Like who's,
Yeah.
whatever it's going on in my head. You think that's the only one that knows about it is me. Period.
Right. And you never hear of anybody indoctrinating you to do good, do you? It's always usually something bad.
You're absolutely right. You're
That's the
absolutely
way it
right.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's the
absolutely.
powers that they want. That's the power that they seek over their reality.
That's
They
what
want to be able to do that. They want to twist your mind or get you to think what they want you to think and do what they want you to do and all that. This is the ultimate control trip. I've told people this before, and it's really true. It is the most addictive thing on this planet is
yes.
power.
I want to say that's what happens with a lot of these
Yeah.
cults. That
Mhm.
these leaders that's what they want is power, over whoever is these followers that they get, and the
A
things
lot of
that
people,
people do.
a lot of people say it's money, but money comes with power.
Sure. No, well, I
That's the
think
way it goes.
there's a point that you say, okay, especially if you're one of the that you have so much money, you would never run out of it. So it's not a money thing anymore. It's always been like you said, it's about the power,
You got
or
to have
that
more and more and more of it.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is addictive.
right, and that also that thing that you think I can get
I'm gonna
people
tell
to
you something very sad. You talk about addictive stuff and all that. I actually saw, this is back when I was, in law enforcement. I actually saw a woman on meth claw
Oh,
her own eyes out.
oh, oh my God. Mm.
She is alive today. She has no eyes, but she is alive. She changed her life from what happened to her, and it's a good thing. But it's a horrible thing that she had to happen. That had to happen in order to do that. But I saw that. I saw the results of that. I once taught. We talk about evil.
Hmm.
Okay, the
Yes.
concept of evil itself. I once knew a guy. He had an argument with his girlfriend. Killed her, cut her up in pieces, put her in the freezer, went home and took a shower and took a nap. We asked him later, why'd you do that?
Yes.
Why did you do it? He said, I don't really know why I did that, but I did it.
And then we get, well, besides the fact that they dehumanize them, then I mean, and by this people say, "Oh, you're trying to excuse their actions." No, but then that's when you start going into that thing about demonic obsession or oppression. Where some of these people, not all the time, and I know sometimes mental illnesses will do that. Afterwards, they have no memory of what they did, of the actual, let's say, murder. And
They become those pawns, like we talked about with the green dream witches that can take over people and manipulate
yes,
people, and they turn you into
yes,
a living zombie, so to speak.
yes.
That's what they're doing. If we ever do have a zombie apocalypse, I guarantee you it won't be the dead coming back. They will be living people turned into these things because they are working on doing that. They want to do that because that is the ultimate weapon right there when you think about it. But there are actually rogue scientists at work right now on developing a Z virus like that to turn people into zombies. It can be done. I have seen people act like zombies on drugs, okay? I
Oh,
know
yes,
it can be done. It's not that far fetched.
yes,
This is not some kind of weird science
yes.
fiction
It
stuff.
does. It does such a bad. What it does to the human brain is like it. Yeah, it does leave people like zombies. Like all the qualities
You
that
know
make
what?
you human are they go away.
I
And
had somebody ask me the other day, said, Dr. Carroll, what is the weirdest, scariest thing that you know of?
what did you
And my
say?
answer is this: it is the fact that all of this that we've been talking about is real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not made up. It's not fantasy. It's real. Witchcraft is real. All these other things we're talking about is real. And that to me would actually have to be the most frightening aspect of it all. And I've told the people over all these years that I've studied it and been involved in this, the really weird thing that sticks out to me is that all of this, in a weird, weird way, is connected.
Sure.
And somebody asked me, Marlene, said, how's it connected? We are the connection.
Mm-hmm.
We are the connection.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yes,
Hmm.
absolutely. Well, Dennis, it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. For my podcast listeners, what is your website so that they can find you?
Yes, if you need to contact me, I have a paranormal consultation service, of course, we mentioned earlier. If you
Yes.
have any problems, you want to, just want to tell me your story or share a story with me, whatever the situation,
Okay.
you can get in contact with me at denniswcarroll.com.
Okay.
And I have two podcasts I do every week. Wednesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Hunting the
Okay.
Shadows. Come on over to Hunting the Shadows Network on YouTube and join and subscribe. We'd love to have you there. And I do another one on Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well, called
Okay.
Paranormal Point of View. But come over to the channel, join, subscribe. And also, I have some books available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon.com. Just look up the author,
Mhm.
Dennis W. Carroll. I had to put the W in there. There's another Dennis Carroll. He plays football, and I don't.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, we got to put the W in there. Again, I'm going to put a link to your website anyway in the credits of the show. But it has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you, Dennis, and I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, you too, and don't be careful now because Christmas is the actual, not Halloween, but Christmas is the actual spookiest time of the year. You
Yes,
know?
yes. People don't realize it. Yeah, they get all confused with Santa Claus running around and stuff. But yeah, yeah.
There
There's
you
a
go.
lot
Or
going on with
Krampus.
that. Okay, take care.
Yeah.
Bye
All
bye.
right.
He's great. He's fantastic. I love talking to Dennis because Dennis lets you have it with both barrels. Some of the things that he says that you're like, wow, how's this? Some of the things that he says, you think, wow, that's over the top, but not. He's been doing it a long time. And as you can tell after a while, you realize, yes, there's things that happen that it's like, okay, this is strictly, how's this? This is strictly not paranormal. How's this? That thing with the drugs, people that story about the lady clawing her eyes out and things like that. Which by the way, I mean, on that alone, you could say, well, you know what, this is strictly a product of her ingesting those drugs, and God knows maybe she had a history of it. And then you can even go to the point of like, was there a supernatural agent in the background that maybe pushed her into falling into addiction and maybe not being able to get to it to the point that she did that to herself? Who knows? I mean, I wasn't there. But yeah, and I've spoken to a lot of through the years, through first responders, whether police, paramedics, fire people. They will all, I think without fault, after a while that they've been on the job, they will have some stories to tell you about things that they've seen that they're like, that's not normal. Or that's not right. Of course, they gotta like they can't be talking about that because, but yeah, all of them. And of course, if you have a longer career line in that line of work, you do see things, hear things that you realize there's something supernatural, or they see things, hear things that wigs them out, and there's no accounting for it. There's no accounting for it as far as what was the origins of it. And as a matter of fact, that story I was going to tell Dennis about, that like in the early 60s, there was this rash of what they thought would look like ritualized events. And usually it was going on, and sometimes in churches, or that the UK has these very old chapels and these old churches that sometimes go back centuries, that they were having people going into these places like after dark and having rituals. Because remember, when they do this, they're desecrating the church. As a matter of fact, some of the churches that were still active had to be reconsecrated. And there was one, it's a which by the way, the church, even now, this happened in 1963, I want to say. Even now, it still has a reputation. 63. It was a church called St. Mary's in a place in the UK called Clophill. All right, this old original church was built like on a hill. Okay, and like he was saying, you get the cemetery all around it, and I think this church went back to the 15th century, something like that. It was a very old church, cathedral. Anyway, back in 1963, what had happened in the meantime was in other words, it was a trek and blah 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 blah. So they had built like a new church, like closer to where the little town was, this village, Clophill, and they called it the New St. Mary's. And what they did was originally was they would hold once per year service in the old church, and I believe they used it as a mortuary, and they would still bury people up there. But everybody was attending. In other words, it was kind of up on the hill, not remote, but you had to like trek up there. So in March, there had been like this big winter storm. In March, a couple of boys are up there. And by the way, in the 50s, somebody had taken, I think it was the lead out of the roof. So this church had become more derelict than before. The only thing that kept it is that when they built these churches, they would use these huge, thick walls. But basically, even the roof, it was open. It was open sky. These boys go up there and they find a human skull impaled. Somebody had taken like a piece of iron, stuck it in there, impaled the skull, and rearranged the human bones on what used to be the altar, which wasn't an altar anymore, but what had served as the altar. Come to find out, they go over there and they find out that there was several old graves. One of them they had gotten open, which, by the way, they were explaining that they had these stone slabs on top of these graves that you would need like four men with leverage to be able to pull up the slab to slide it out of the way. Somebody had actually gone into one, moved it out of the way, had gone down. You had to go about 8 feet down to get to the bones and bring them up. The tomb that they violated was a woman called Jenny Humberstone. She was 22 and she died like, was it 1730? She had died like of smallpox. She had been the wife of the apothecary of that little town. That's how old this village was. So they saw like crowbar marks on 6 of the other tombs, but this one, for some reason, they were able to open, and they were later on. In other words, later on, when they started looking at it, they were thinking, okay, this is not like a bunch of teenagers that decided to go and do this. And this is not like a bunch of kids, because of just what you had to go through just to open that, pull that slab and put it out of the way. They found marks on like 5 or 6 of the other tombs. Same thing, that where they had these slabs like crowbar, they couldn't. Finally, they were able to open this one, and part of the ritual was obviously getting a human skeleton. And by the way, they noted, which may or not, that all the other ones that they tried to open were also belonged to women. Might have something, might have not had anything to do with it. Well, they, obviously they were saying this is ritualized, which it was. When you read about what the way it was done, it was some type of, and they did find one of the things that apparently that was used in these type of occult ceremonies was that they would kill a cockerel. They didn't find, but they found entrails and feathers, so they do think that something was sacrificed there. But beyond that, they really didn't find anything else, and it got a lot of attention. And the rector that was over St. Mary's, he had taken the bones, and I guess the police looked into it and was like, what is this? Whatever. They're like, okay, this is ritualized. So he has this lady's bones, and he's thinking, okay, let me. They had closed up this hole because this is like a. He goes back out there thinking, okay, let me rebury her bones. And he finds that they had gone back and opened the grave again. Like, in other words, shifted the slab again, looking to, I guess they thought he had already put her bones back. So they had gone back to try to get the bones. So at that point, he says, I'm not going to put them back in there because obviously they want these bones for what purposes? Well, God only knows. So he keeps them. Make a long story short, they got a bunch of people tramping through there. They had a bunch of occurrences in that area and in the surrounding. Like I said, there was a couple of these old churches where night watchmen would find people trying to do some type of satanic rituals inside an active church, that they had to reconsecrate the churches. There was like they would find sacrificed animals. A lot of really. There was another rector that they disinterred the body of a child, and he had to reinter it. And he was saying, no, this is some type of ceremony. This was like, who's going to unbury a child? So this rector, eventually he gets so wigged out, and that at some point he starts thinking that he's being followed by what he called the witches, what he thought that were working. And then what's really funny, for example, not too far from there, like a couple of months later, they find, what was it? Was it 4 or 5 cows and 2 horses? They only find the heads. Okay. Their jaws have been broken apart. Some of the eyeballs had been split in half. You could tell it was ritualistic, and they had been hidden. So in other words, that they were going to come back. They never found the rest of the animals. All they found were the heads. All right. What was really weird was the police went and contacted farmers within a 50 miles area of where nobody reported missing animals, which, by the way, horses and cows are valuable animals in a farm. And I was thinking, okay, Do you think that maybe some farmer was part of the was the in it part of it? Again, they never got an answer to that. This place with this poor rector gets to the point where he starts thinking that they're going to try to kill him. The succeeding years, and I'm giving you the condensed version. His daughter dies, she gets hit by a car. His wife dies. He finally retires. And supposedly he moves out to like this little cottage, like away. Like in other words, he retires as like, and apparently one time he's staying someplace and there was a couple there, and he comes out and he supposedly finds some type of burnt stuff. In other words, something that looked like ritualistic, I guess, to wig him out, which it did. Poor guy. And it turns out that apparently all this time, I want to say it was like 6 years later. This happened in 63, and I want to say this was around 1969. He had never put the girl's bones back into her grave. He had kept them. As a matter of fact, he had them in the trunk of his car, or what they call the boot, because he always thought that they're trying to get the bones. And then there was I read other stuff that were saying, hey, sometimes this, even though he was the rector of the church, that maybe he drank a little bit too much, but still. And eventually he fades out of the picture. He just like he wanted to disappear because he really, really, really thought these people were after him. Which kind of like, we could do one of those scary 60s films out of the UK where the villagers are all children of the corn kind of deal, like looking at you. And and eventually but what happened was, though, that this Clophill, the St. Mary's, developed this thing of where, yeah, there was a lot of people going out there just out of curiosity, absolutely. But after a while, even now, I believe there were still people going out there, and not to was it how long ago, I can't remember, where remember they had tombs dating back hundreds of years. They just flattened everything. They just pulled the tombstones out and they just leveled the place because they were getting, it wasn't the curiosity seeker or the legend tripper. They were still getting people even so many years afterwards attracted to the place because of the supposedly satanic rituals that had taken place there. All right. I mean, it's really interesting. If you want to, I'll have the article up. I haven't published it yet on my website, Stranger Than Fiction Stories. But yeah, you can read about it. So my point being that even when I asked him that thing about, did you ever arrive on some crime scene and you saw things that maybe to somebody that didn't know what they were looking at, they wouldn't realize that there was ritual, what's the word for it? Signposts, like ritual things that unless you knew what you were looking at, you wouldn't realize, okay, this might just look like a crime or a murder or whatever. But something was going on here, just like what he was talking about, that unless you have eyes to see, you don't realize that, how's this, that, yeah, it might have been one person killing another, let's say, regular old, but that what they were involved in was something dark. And the reason why I say this is, as a matter of fact, a lot of drug deals gone bad, or people that are into the drug trafficking, there's a big undercurrent, huge undercurrent of ritualistic murder and satanic beliefs. And everybody's like, oh, that's so dramatic. But it is. Okay. Whether it's just that this is what comes with that environment, or maybe they were, and that's why they get into the drug trafficking or the human trafficking or whatever. Yes. And sometimes, as a matter of fact, when they've raided some of these drug houses or places where they think they're holding people, they will sometimes, very often, find rooms with all these altars and really dark stuff. I mean, I'm not talking folkloric stuff. I'm not talking the equivalent of what he was talking about, grounding magic. No, no, no. I'm talking here that you could say this is really dark stuff. Yeah, that goes hand in hand. That's a very dark, deep rabbit hole. So anyway, guys, I hope you like this interview with Dennis Carroll. Again, if you go looking for his website, don't forget to put the W in it. And like I said, he has his YouTube podcast. Look him up. He's great. He's fantastic. He's got a lot of great shows. Go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, mppellicer.com, links. You can sign up for my newsletter. Again, I have links to everything, all my podcasts, the video versions, the articles that I write, even my Substack newsletter. Everything's there. That's where my one-stop shop. That's where you can find it. I even have one page of merch, which is just cups, different mugs with very unusual, usually out of print, like very old artwork. If you want something that's different from what you find in the regular stores, I've got that there. So anyway, guys, I know this is a little bit staggered by the time you actually see it and or hear it. But Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, the best to everybody, and yeah, hoping for the best. And I will be seeing you soon. Till next time, take care. Remember, you are all wonderful.